Laws, Chapter 6. The importance of family and education.
Agreed.
When organizing a state, there are two aspects to consider. First, the number and establishment of the magistracies, and second, once they have been established, the laws that will govern each of them. But before we elect the magistrates, let us take a moment to discuss the process of their election.
What do you have to say?
Here's what I have to say. Everyone can see that even though legislation is of utmost importance, if a well-ordered city adds unsuitable offices to good laws, not only will the good laws be useless and ridiculous, but they will also cause great harm and damage.
Of course.
This is a serious matter, and excuses will not help. So let me tell you what we need to do, since you and 9 others have offered to establish the new state on behalf of the people of Crete, and I am here to assist you with the creation of this story. I would not want to leave the tale without a conclusion. A headless monster is quite hideous.
Excellent, stranger.
Yes, and I will keep my promise.
Let us definitely do as you propose.
We will, with the help of God, if old age allows us.
But God will be gracious.
Yes, and under His guidance, let us consider another point.
What is it?
Let us remember how audacious and daring our city is.
What did you mean by that?
I meant the casual way in which we are expecting the inexperienced colonists to accept our laws. Now, Cleinias, it does not take much wisdom to see that no one can easily accept laws when they are first imposed. But if we could somehow wait until those who have been raised with these laws since childhood and have been nurtured in them and become accustomed to them, participate in the public elections of the state, then I believe there would be extraordinarily little danger of the state not being stable in the long run.
That's a reasonable assumption.
So let us consider if there is a way to overcome this difficulty. Because Cleinias, I believe that the people of Knossos, more than any other Cretans, should not only fulfill their duty to the colony but also make every effort to establish the offices that are first created by them in the best and most reliable manner. This especially applies to the selection of the guardians of the law, who must be chosen first and with great care. The others are of lesser importance.
How can we go about electing them?
This will be the method. I will say to the sons of the Cretans that, since the people of Knossos have precedence over the other states, they should, along with those who join this settlement, choose a group of 37 individuals in total. 19 of them will be selected from the settlers, and the remaining 18 will be chosen from the citizens of Knossos. The citizens of Knossos will present these 18 individuals as a gift to your colony, and you yourself will be one of the 18 and become a citizen of the new state. And if you and the others cannot be persuaded to go, the people of Knossos may use a little force to make you.
But why, stranger, don't you and McGillis take part in our new city?
Oh, Cleinias, Athens and Sparta are proud cities, and they are also far away. But you and the other colonists are conveniently located, as you mentioned. I have been discussing the best way to manage the new citizens under the current circumstances. However, in the future, if the city continues to exist, let the election be conducted as follows. All those who are soldiers, whether on horseback or on foot, or have served in the military at the appropriate ages, shall participate in the election of magistrates. The election shall take place in the most revered temple chosen by the state, and each person shall bring their vote to the altar of the god. They shall write down on a tablet the name of the person they are voting for, as well as their father's name, tribe, and ward. They shall also sign their own name in the same manner. Anyone who wishes may take any tablet that they believe is not properly filled out and exhibit it in the agora for a period of at least 30 days. The tablets that are considered first, numbering 300, shall be shown to the entire city by the magistrates. The citizens will then choose their preferred candidates from these tablets. The second selection, consisting of 100 candidates, will be presented to the citizens. In the third round, anyone who wishes may choose whomever they please from the 100 candidates, walking through the parts of victims. The chosen individuals will then become magistrates, and the 37 candidates with the highest number of votes will be proclaimed. However, Cleinias and McGillis, who will oversee the selection and scrutiny of magistrates in our colony. If we think about it, cities under construction like ours must have individuals who cannot be elected before there are any magistrates. Yet, They must be elected in some way, and they must be the best possible candidates. As the proverb says, a good beginning is half the business, and a good start is even more important than that and has never been praised enough.
That is absolutely true.
So, let us acknowledge the difficulty and determine how to accomplish this beginning. I have only one proposal to offer, which is necessary and expedient under our circumstances.
What is it?
Our colony has a father and mother, and they are none other than the colonizing state. I know that many colonies have been and will be at odds with their parent states. But in the early days, just like in a family, the child loves and is loved by their parents. Even if there comes a time when the bond is broken, while the child needs education, they naturally love their parents and seek protection from their relatives. They find their only natural allies in times of need within their family. This parental sentiment already exists in the Nosians, as evidenced by their care for the new city. Similarly, the young city feels a similar sentiment towards Gnosis. And I reiterate what I was saying, there is no harm in repeating a good thing, that the Nosians should take a shared interest in all these matters. They should choose, as much as possible, the eldest and best of the colonists, numbering no less than 100. Additionally, there should be another 100 Nosians themselves. These individuals, upon their arrival, should jointly ensure that magistrates are appointed according to the law and undergo scrutiny. Once this is accomplished, the Nosians shall return home, and the new city will do its best for its own preservation and happiness. I propose that the 37 individuals chosen now and, in the future, fulfill the following duties. Firstly, they shall be the guardians of the law. Secondly, they shall oversee the registers in which each citizen declares their property, except for 4 minae allowed for citizens of the first class, 3 for the second, 2 for the third, and 1 mina for the fourth. If anyone, for the sake of gain, is found to possess unregistered property, all the excess shall be confiscated, and they shall be liable to a dishonorable and unfortunate lawsuit. Anyone who wishes may accuse them of pursuing base gains and proceed against them before the guardians of the law. If they are found guilty, they shall lose their share of public possessions. During any public distribution, they shall receive nothing but their original allotment. They shall be recorded as condemned individuals for the rest of their lives, in a place where anyone can read about their offenses. The guardians of the law shall not hold office for more than 20 years and must be at least 50 years old when elected. If they are elected at the age of 60, they shall hold office for only 10 years. Similarly, they must not expect to hold such an important office as the guardian of the laws after the age of 70 if they live that long. These are the first 3 regulations concerning the guardians of the law. As the legislative work progresses, each law will assign them further duties. Now, let us move on to the election of other officials. Generals must be elected, and they, in turn, must have their ministers, commanders, colonels of horse, and brigade commanders, who are more commonly known as brigadiers. The guardians of the law shall propose native citizens of the city as generals. The candidates proposed will be selected by those who are or have been of military service age. If someone believes that a candidate not proposed is better than one who is, they may name their preferred candidate and swear that they are better. They may then propose to them. The candidate who receives the most votes will be included in the final selection. The 3 candidates with the highest number of votes will be appointed as generals and superintendents of military affairs after undergoing scrutiny, like the guardians of the law. And let the generals thus elected propose 12 brigadiers, 1 for each tribe, and there shall be a right of counterproposal as in the case of the generals, and the voting and decision shall take place in the same way. Until the prytanes and council are elected, the guardians of the law shall convene the assembly in some holy spot which is suitable to the purpose, placing the hoplites by themselves, and the cavalry by themselves, and in a third division all the rest of the army. All are to vote for the generals, and for the colonels of horse, but the brigadiers are to be voted for only by those who carry shields, i.e., the hoplites. Let the body of cavalry choose phylarchs for the generals, but captains of light troops, or archers, or any other division of the army, shall be appointed by the generals for themselves. There only remains the appointment of officers of cavalry. These shall be proposed by the same persons who proposed the generals, and the election and the counter-proposal of other candidates shall be arranged in the same way as in the case of the generals. And let the cavalry vote and the infantry look on at the election. The two who have the greatest number of votes shall be the leaders of all the horse. Disputes about the voting may be raised once or twice, but if the dispute be raised a third time, the officers who preside at the several elections shall decide. The council shall consist of 30 by 12 members. 360 will be a convenient number for subdivision. If we divide the whole number into 4 parts of 90 each, we get 90 councillors for each class. First, all the citizens shall select candidates from the first class. They shall be compelled to vote, and, if they do not, shall be duly fined. When the candidates have been selected, someone shall mark them down. This shall be the business of the first day. And on the following day, candidates shall be selected from the second class in the same manner and under the same conditions as on the previous day, and on the third day a selection shall be made from the third class, at which every one may, if he likes, vote. And the 3 first classes shall be compelled to vote, but the 4th and lowest class shall be under no compulsion, and any member of this class who does not vote shall not be punished. On the 4th day candidates shall be selected from the 4th and smallest class. They shall be selected by all, but he who is of the 4th class shall suffer no penalty, nor he who is of the 3rd, if he be not willing to vote. But he who is of the 1st or 2nd class, if he does not vote, shall be punished. He who is of the 2nd class shall pay a fine of triple the amount which was exacted at first, and he who is of the 1st class quadruple. On the 5th day the rulers shall bring out the names noted down, for all the citizens to see, and every man shall choose out of them, under pain, if he do not, of suffering the first penalty. And when they have chosen 180 out of each of the classes, they shall choose 1/2 of them by lot, who shall undergo a scrutiny. These are to form the council for the year. The mode of election which has been described is in a mean between monarchy and democracy, and such a mean the state ought always to observe, for servants and masters never can be friends, nor good and bad, merely because they are declared to have equal privileges. For to unequals equals become unequal, if they are not harmonized by measure, and both by reason of equality, and by reason of inequality, cities are filled with seditions. The old saying, that equality makes friendship, is happy and true, but there is obscurity and confusion as to what sort of equality is meant. For there are 2 equalities which are called by the same name, but are in reality in many ways almost the opposite of one another. One of them may be introduced without difficulty by any state or any legislator in the distribution of honors. This is the rule of measure, weight, and number, which regulates and apportions them. But there is another equality, of a better and higher kind, which is not so easily recognized. This is the judgment of Zeus. Among men it avails but little. That little, however, is the source of the greatest good to individuals and states. For it gives to the greater more, and to the inferior less, and in proportion to the nature of each, and greater honor always to the greater virtue, and to the less less, and to either in proportion to their respective measure of virtue and education. And this is justice, and is ever the true principle of states, at which we ought to aim, and according to this rule order the new city, which is now being founded, and any other city which may be hereafter founded. To this the legislator should look, not to the interests of tyrants one or more, or to the power of the people, but to justice always, which, as I was saying, is the distribution of natural equality among unequals in each case. But there are times at which every state is compelled to use the words just, equal, in a secondary sense, in the hope of escaping from factions. For equity and indulgence are infractions of the perfect and strict rule of justice. And this is the reason we are obliged to use the equality of the lot, in order to avoid the discontent of the people, and so, we invoke God and fortune in our prayers, and beg that they themselves will direct the lot with a view to supreme justice. And therefore, even though we are compelled to use both equalities, we should use the one that involves chance as rarely as possible. So, my friends, for the reasons I have given, a state should act in a way that ensures its endurance and salvation. Just as a ship sailing on the sea must be constantly watched, a city is also sailing on a sea of politics and is vulnerable to various deceptive attacks. Therefore, rulers must join hands with other rulers, and watchers must join hands with other watchers, continuously passing on their responsibilities in a perpetual succession. A multitude can never fulfill this duty with the same level of energy. Additionally, most senators will have to attend to their own affairs at home for most of the year. Therefore, they should be divided into 12 groups, corresponding to the 12 months, and each group should serve as guardians of the state for a single month. Their duty is to be available to receive any foreigner or citizen who approaches them, whether to provide information or to ask questions that require a response from the city. Furthermore, if there is a likelihood of internal disturbances, which are always prone to occur in some form or another, they should try to prevent them from happening. If they have already occurred, they should waste no time in informing the city and resolving the issue. Therefore, the governing body of the state should always have control over their assemblies and their dissolutions, both regular and extraordinary. This responsibility should be carried out by the 12th part of the council, which should always be on watch alongside the other officers of the state for one portion of the year and rest for the remaining 11 portions. This will ensure that the city is meticulously organized. Now, who will oversee the countryside, and how should it be arranged? Since the entire city and country have been divided into 12 portions, shouldn't there be appointed supervisors for the streets of the city, the houses, buildings, harbors, marketplaces, fountains, sacred areas, temples, and similar places?
Certainly, there should be.
Let us assume, then, that there should be temple servants, priests, and priestesses. There should also be supervisors of roads and buildings, who will ensure that people and animals do no harm, both within the city and in the suburbs. Thus, 3 types of officers need to be appointed to meet the city's needs. Those responsible for the city should be called city wardens, those responsible for the marketplace should be called marketplace wardens, and those responsible for the temples should be called priests. Those who hold hereditary positions as priests or priestesses should not be disturbed. However, if there are few or none such individuals, as is likely when a new city is founded, priests and priestesses should be appointed to serve the gods who have no servants. Some of our officers should be elected, while others should be appointed by lot, with both the people and non-people mingling in a friendly manner in every place and city, so that the state can be as unified as possible. The officers of the temple should be appointed by lot, allowing God to determine their selection according to his will. The chosen individuals should then undergo scrutiny to ensure they are physically sound and of legitimate birth. They should also prove that they come from a pure family, free from any stain of murder or similar impiety, and that their parents have led similarly blameless lives. The laws concerning all matters of religion should be obtained from Delphi, and interpreters should be appointed to guide their use. The tenure of the priesthood should always be 1 year and no longer. Those who faithfully carry out the sacred duties according to the laws of religion must be at least 60 years old. The same rules apply to priestesses. As for the interpreters, they should be appointed as follows. The 12 tribes should be divided into groups of 4, and each group should select 1 representative from each tribe within the group 3 times. After undergoing scrutiny, the 3 individuals with the most votes from each group, a total of 9, should be sent to Delphi so that the god may choose 1 from each triad. Their age should be the same as that of the priests, and they should undergo scrutiny in the same manner. They should serve as interpreters for life, and when one of them dies, the 4 tribes should select a replacement from the tribe of the deceased. In addition to priests and interpreters, there must be treasurers who will manage the property of the various temples and sacred areas. They will have authority over the produce and the leasing of these properties. 3 treasurers should be chosen from the highest classes for the larger temples, 2 for the smaller temples, and 1 for the smallest of all. The process of their election and scrutiny should be the same as that of the generals. This is the order for the temples. Let everything have a guard as much as possible. The defense of the city shall be entrusted to the generals, taxiarchs, hipparchs, phylarchs, prytanes, and the wardens of the city and agora, once their election is complete. The defense of the countryside shall be organized as follows. The entire land has already been divided into 12 equal parts, and the tribe assigned to each division shall annually provide 5 wardens of the country and commanders of the watch. Each group of 5 shall have the authority to select 12 others from the youth of their own tribe, who must be between 25 and 30 years old. These wardens shall be assigned different districts each month, so that they may gain knowledge and experience of the entire country. The term of service for commanders and watchers shall be 2 years. Once their stations have been assigned, they will move from place to place in a regular order, going from left to right as directed by their commanders. When I say, going to the right, I mean they will go east. At the beginning of the 2nd year, so that as many guards as possible may become familiar with the country during different seasons, their commanders shall lead them again from left to right, moving from place to place until the 2nd year is complete. In the 3rd year, new wardens of the country and commanders of the watch shall be chosen, 5 for each division, who will oversee the groups of 12. While stationed at each location, their attention shall be focused on the following points. First and foremost, they shall ensure that the country is well protected against enemies. They shall dig trenches and fortify as needed to keep troublemakers at bay and prevent harm to the country and its property. They shall utilize the available laborers and beasts of burden, supervising them during their free time. They shall make every part of the country inaccessible to enemies and as accessible as possible to friends. There shall be roads for people, beasts of burden, and livestock, and they shall strive to keep them in good condition. They shall take measures to prevent rain from causing harm to the land when it flows down from the mountains into the valleys, using works and ditches to control the overflow. This way, the valleys can receive and absorb the rainwater, providing fountains and streams in the fields and regions below, even in dry areas. The water sources, whether rivers or springs, shall be adorned with plantations and buildings for beauty. They shall channel the streams underground, ensuring abundance. If there is a sacred grove or dedicated area nearby, they shall bring water to the actual temples of the gods, beautifying them throughout the year. In such places, the youth shall create gymnasia for themselves and warm baths for the elderly, providing ample dry wood for the benefit of those suffering from illness. These constructions and similar works will be useful and decorative, providing pleasant entertainment but also serving as serious endeavors. The 60 wardens shall guard their respective divisions not only against enemies but also against potential troublemakers among the locals. When a dispute arises between neighbors or citizens, and one person, whether slave or freeman, wrongs another, the 5 wardens shall have the authority to settle minor matters. However, for more serious charges brought against another person, the group of 17, composed of the 5s and 12s, shall adjudicate cases not involving more than 3 minae. Every judge and magistrate shall be accountable for their actions in office, except for those who, like kings, have final decision-making power. Furthermore, if the wardens of the country commit any wrongs against those under their care, such as assigning unequal tasks or taking produce or tools without consent, or if they accept bribes, make unjust rulings, or succumb to flattery, they shall be publicly disgraced. In cases of other wrongdoings against the inhabitants of the country, if the matter involves a mina, they shall submit to the decision of the villagers in the vicinity. However, for cases involving larger or smaller amounts, if they refuse to submit, thinking that their monthly relocation to another part of the country will allow them to escape, the injured party may bring their case to the common court. If they win the case, they may exact double the penalty from the defendant who refused to submit. The officials and supervisors of the country, during their 2-year service, shall have communal meals at their respective stations and live together. If anyone is absent from the communal meal or sleeps elsewhere, even for just 1 day or night, unless ordered by their superiors or due to absolute necessity, and if 5 people report them and write their name in the public square for not fulfilling their duty, they shall be considered to have betrayed the city to the best of their ability. They shall be disgraced and beaten without consequence by anyone who encounters them and is willing to punish them. If any of the commanders commit such an offense, the entire group of 60 shall address it, and anyone who is aware of the offense but does not bring the offender to trial shall be subject to the same laws as the younger offender and shall pay a heavier fine. They shall also be disqualified from ever commanding the young. The overseers of the law shall be diligent in inspecting these matters and shall either prevent or punish offenders. Every person should remember the universal rule that one who is not a good servant will not be a good master. A person should take more pride in serving well than in commanding well. First and foremost, they should take pride in serving the laws, which is also serving the gods. Secondly, they should take pride in having served respected and honorable individuals in their youth. Furthermore, during the 2 years in which someone is an overseer of the country, their daily food should be simple and humble. When the 12 overseers and the 5 meet, they should determine that they will be their own servants and, like servants, will not have other slaves and servants for their personal use. They shall not use the villagers and farmers for their own advantage, but only for public service. In general, they should be self-sufficient, serving each other and themselves. Additionally, throughout the year, regardless of the season, they should be armed and thoroughly survey the entire country. This way, they will both keep watch and gain a thorough knowledge of every area. There is no more important kind of information than having an exact knowledge of one's own country. For this reason, as well as for the pleasure and benefit it brings, the young should engage in activities such as hunting with dogs and other sports. The individuals responsible for this service may be referred to as the secret police or overseers of the country. The name does not matter much, but anyone who cares about the safety of the state should exert their utmost diligence in this service. After discussing the overseers of the country, we must now address the election of overseers of the agora, marketplace, and the city. There were 60 overseers of the country, and there will be 3 overseers of the city. They will divide the city into 12 parts, and like the former overseers, they shall be responsible for the roads, the different highways that lead from the country to the city, and the buildings, ensuring they are constructed according to the law. They shall also oversee the water supply, which the guardians of the supply preserve and deliver to them. Care shall be taken to ensure that the water reaches the fountains pure and abundant, serving as both an ornament and a benefit to the city. These overseers should also be influential individuals with the leisure to attend to public interests. Every person may propose anyone they like from the highest class as an overseer of the city. Once the votes have been cast, and the number is reduced to the 6 individuals with the most votes, the electing officers shall choose 3 out of the 6 by lot. After undergoing scrutiny, these 3 shall hold office according to the laws established for them. Similarly, the overseers of the agora shall be elected from the first and second classes, with a total of 5 overseers. Initially, 10 overseers shall be elected, and then 5 shall be chosen by lot, as in the election of the overseers of the city. After undergoing scrutiny, these 5 shall be declared magistrates. Every person shall vote for every candidate, and anyone who refuses to vote, if reported to the magistrates, shall be fined 50 drachmae and considered a bad citizen. It shall be mandatory for citizens of the first and second classes to attend the assembly and the general council, and they shall be fined 10 drachmae if they fail to respond when their names are called at the assembly. However, the third and fourth classes shall not be compelled to attend, and they shall be exempt from fines unless the magistrates have ordered everyone to be present due to urgent necessity. The overseers of the agora shall ensure that the order prescribed by law is maintained in the marketplace. They shall be responsible for the temples and fountains in the agora, ensuring that nothing is damaged. If anyone causes harm, they shall be punished with lashes and imprisonment if they are a slave or a foreigner. If a citizen misbehaves in this manner, the overseers shall have the authority to impose a fine of up to 100 drachmae on them. With the consent of the overseers of the city, the fine may be doubled. Similarly, the overseers of the city shall have the power to impose punishments and fines within their jurisdiction. They shall have the authority to impose fines up to 1 mina, or up to 2 minae with the consent of the overseers of the agora. Next, it is necessary to appoint directors of music and physical education, 2 of each kind. The first kind will be responsible for education, while the second kind will oversee contests. When we speak of education, we are referring to those who oversee maintaining order and providing instruction in gyms and schools. This includes matters such as attending school and the construction of school buildings for both boys and girls. When we speak of contests, we are referring to judges of gymnastics and music. These judges are further divided into 2 categories, those who judge music and those who judge gymnastics. The same judges who oversee men's gymnastics contests will also judge horse contests. However, in music, there will be one set of judges for solo singing and other musical performances such as rhapsodies, harp playing, flute playing, and the like. Another set of judges will be responsible for judging choral singing. Firstly, we must select directors for the choruses of boys, men, and maidens. These directors will guide them in dance and other musical activities. One director will be sufficient for the choruses, and they should be at least 40 years old. One director will also be enough to introduce solo singers and judge the competitors. This director should be at least 30 years old. The director and manager of the choruses will be elected in the following manner. Those who are interested in such matters should attend a meeting, and if they fail to do so, they will be fined. The guardians of the law will determine the penalty. However, those who have no interest in the matter will not be compelled to attend. The elector will propose a candidate for director who has a good understanding of music. During the scrutiny, the candidate may be challenged by those who claim they lack skill, while others may defend their qualifications. 10 candidates will be elected by vote, and one of the 10 will be chosen by lot. The chosen director will then undergo scrutiny and lead the choruses for a year in accordance with the law. Similarly, the competitor who wins the lot will be the leader of solo and concert music for that year. The elected leader will deliver the award to the judges. Next, we need to select judges for horse and men's contests. These judges will be chosen from the third and second class of citizens. 3 classes will be required to participate in the election, but the lowest class may choose not to attend without consequence. 3 judges will be selected by lot from the 20 who were previously chosen, and they must also receive the vote and approval of the examiners. If any candidate is rejected during the scrutiny at any ballot or decision, others will be chosen in the same manner and undergo similar scrutiny. Now, let us turn our attention to the Minister of the Education of Youth, both male and female. This minister will also govern according to the law. One minister will be sufficient, and they must be 50 years old and have lawfully begotten children, preferably both boys and girls, but at least one or the other. The elected minister and the elector should consider this position as the most important among all the great offices of the state. Just as the first shot of a plant has the greatest impact on its maturity, proper instruction and a fortunate nature are essential for the development of a civilized human being. Aristotle states that man is a tame or civilized animal, but he still requires proper education. With the right education, humans can become the most divine and civilized beings. However, if they are inadequately or poorly educated, they become the most savage creatures on earth. Therefore, the legislator must not allow the education of children to be a secondary or incidental matter. To ensure the best candidate is chosen, the legislator should begin by ensuring that the person elected is the best in every way among all the citizens. The legislator should make every effort to appoint this person as the guardian and superintendent. To achieve this, all the magistrates, except for the council and prytanes, should go to the temple of Apollo and use a ballot to elect the best guardian of the law who they believe will be the most suitable superintendent of education. The candidate with the highest number of votes will undergo scrutiny by all the magistrates who elected them, except for the guardians of the law. The elected candidate will hold office for 5 years, and in the 6th year, another person will be chosen in the same manner to fill the position. If a person holding a public office dies more than 30 days before their term expires, those responsible for the election will choose another person to fill the office in the same manner as before. If a person entrusted with the care of orphans dies, the relatives residing at home, including cousins, from both the father's and mother's side, must appoint another guardian within 10 days. Failure to do so will result in a fine of 1 drachma per day. A city that lacks regular courts of law ceases to be a city. Furthermore, if a judge remains silent during preliminary proceedings and does not say more than the litigants, as is the case in arbitrations, they will never be able to decide justly. Therefore, a multitude of judges will not easily make fair judgments, and even a few judges will struggle if they are not competent. The point of contention between the parties must be made clear, and time, deliberation, and repeated examination contribute to resolving doubts. For this reason, anyone who enters a legal dispute with another should first seek the counsel of their neighbors and friends, who are most familiar with the issues at hand. If they are unable to reach a satisfactory resolution, then they should turn to another court. If the two courts are unable to settle the matter, then a third court should be sought to bring an end to the lawsuit. The establishment of courts of justice can be seen as the selection of magistrates, as every magistrate must also act as a judge in certain matters. Even though a judge may not hold a magistrate position, they still hold great importance on the day they decide in a lawsuit. Therefore, let us consider judges as magistrates and discuss who is fit to be a judge, what they should judge, and how many judges should preside over each case. The highest court should be the one chosen by the litigants themselves, where they agree upon certain individuals. There should also be two other courts, one for private cases, where a citizen accuses another of wrongdoing and seeks a decision, and another for public cases, where a citizen believes that the public has been wronged by an individual and wishes to defend the common interests. We must not forget to mention the qualifications and identities of the judges. Firstly, there should be a court open to all private individuals who are involved in a lawsuit for the third time. This court should be composed of all the state officers, both annual and those with longer terms. At the start of the new year, in the month following the summer solstice, on the second to last day of the year, they should gather in a temple and, calling upon God as a witness, dedicate one judge from each magistracy as their first selection. They should choose the individual they believe to be the best and most capable of deciding the cases of their fellow citizens in the upcoming year in a just and righteous manner. After the selection, a scrutiny should be held in the presence of the electors. If anyone is rejected, another should be chosen in the same manner. Those who pass the scrutiny should judge the cases of those who have declined the lower courts, and their votes should be public. The counselors and other magistrates who elected them should be required to be present as listeners and observers of the cases, and anyone else who wishes to attend may do so. If one person accuses another of intentionally making a wrong decision, they should go to the guardians of the law and present their accusation. If the accused is found guilty, they should pay damages to the injured party equal to half the harm caused. If they are deemed to deserve a greater penalty, the judges should determine the additional punishment they should face and how much they should pay to the public treasury and the party who brought the suit. In cases involving offenses against the state, the people should participate, as when someone wrongs the state, everyone is wronged and has a reasonable right to be part of the decision-making process. Such cases should originate from the people and the final decision should rest with them. However, the trial should take place before three of the highest magistrates, agreed upon by both the plaintiff and the defendant. If they are unable to agree, the counsel should choose one of the proposed magistrates. In private suits, as much as possible, everyone should have a share, as those who are not involved in the administration of justice may feel excluded from the state. Therefore, there should be a court of law in every tribe, and the judges should be chosen by lot. They should give their decisions immediately and should not be swayed by pleas for leniency. The final judgment should rest with the court that has been established in the most incorruptible form possible. This court should be for those who are unable to resolve their suits in the lower courts or the courts of their neighbors or tribes. This concludes the discussion on courts of law, which, as I mentioned earlier, cannot be precisely defined as offices or non-offices. I have provided a brief overview, including some details and omitting others. A more detailed explanation of the laws regarding lawsuits under various categories will be provided at the end of the legislative body. Let us now proceed to that point. So far, our legislation has primarily focused on the appointment of offices. To achieve perfect unity and precision in every aspect of political administration, we must have a complete discussion that has a beginning, middle, and end. At present, we have reached the election of magistrates, which can be considered a sufficient conclusion to what came before. Now, there should be no further delay or hesitation in beginning the work of legislation.
I agree with what you have said, stranger, and I particularly appreciate how you seamlessly transitioned from the end of your previous discourse to the beginning of this one.
So far, the discussion among the older men has gone well, hasn't it?
You mean their serious and noble pursuit?
Perhaps. But I would like to know if you and I agree about something.
About what?
You know how painters spend endless hours working on their paintings, constantly adding or removing colors, or whatever term artists use. It seems like they will never stop touching up their works, always making them brighter and more beautiful.
I have heard about this, although I am not remarkably familiar with the art.
That's all right, we can still use the illustration. Imagine someone wanting to paint a figure in the most beautiful way, hoping that their work will not only last, but also improve over time. Do you see that, being mortal, unless they leave someone to succeed them who can correct any flaws that time may introduce, and who can add what the artist left imperfect, and further enhance and improve the picture, all their hard work will only last a short time?
True.
Isn't the aim of a legislator similar? First, they want their laws to be written down with utmost precision. Then, as time goes on and they have tested their decrees, won't they find omissions? Do you think there has ever been a legislator foolish enough not to know that many things are necessarily omitted, and that someone who comes after them must correct them for the Constitution and the order of government to not deteriorate, but rather improve in the state they have established?
Certainly, that is what everyone would desire.
And if someone has any means of accomplishing this, whether through words or actions, or has any way, big or small, of teaching someone how to understand and maintain and improve the laws, they should finish what they have to say and not leave the work incomplete.
Absolutely.
And isn't that what you and I have to do right now?
What do we have to do?
Since we are about to legislate and have chosen our guardians of the law, and we ourselves are in the later years of our lives while they are young men, we should not only legislate for them, but also try to make them not only guardians of the law, but legislators themselves, as much as possible.
Certainly, if we can.
At the very least, we must try our best.
Of course.
We will say to them, O friends and saviors of our laws, when laying down any law, there will be many details that we will omit, and that cannot be helped. However, we will do our best to describe what is important and provide an outline for you to fill in. And I will explain the principle on which you should act. McGillis, Cleinias, and I have often discussed these matters, and we believe we have spoken well. We hope that you will agree with us and become our disciples, keeping in mind the things that, in our united opinion, the legislator and guardian of the law should consider. There was one main point on which we agreed: a person's whole life should be devoted to acquiring the virtues appropriate to them, whether through study, habit, or some other means of acquisition, desire, opinion, or knowledge. This applies to people, old and young. The aim of all should always be as I have described, and the good person should show that they completely disregard anything that may hinder them. And if, in the end, necessity compels them to become an outlaw from their homeland rather than submit to the yoke of slavery and be ruled by inferiors, and they have to flee and endure all the trials of exile, rather than accept another form of government that is likely to make people worse. These are our original principles. Now, fix your eyes on the standard of what a person and a citizen should or should not be, and praise or criticize the laws accordingly. Criticize those that do not have the power to make the citizen better, but embrace those that do. Embrace them gladly and live by them, bidding a long farewell to other institutions that aim for goods of a different kind. Let us now move on to another class of laws, starting with their foundation in religion. But first, we must return to number 5040. The entire number has many convenient divisions, and the number of tribes, which is 1/12 of the whole, is also correctly formed by 21 by 20, 5040/21 by 20, i.e., 5040 divided by 420 is equal to 12. The whole number is divisible by 12, and so is the number of each tribe. Every portion should be regarded as a sacred gift from heaven, corresponding to the months and the revolution of the universe. Every city has a guiding and sacred principle given by nature, but in some cities, the division or distribution has been more correct, sacred, and fortunate than in others. Nothing is more correct than the selection of the number 5040, which can be divided by all numbers from 1 to 12, except for 11, and that can be easily corrected. If we subtract two families from the dividend, 5040, the division is fixed. The truth of this can be easily proven when we have the time. But for now, relying on the mere assertion of this principle, let us divide the state. We will assign to each portion a deity or a divine figure, and we will give them altars and sacred rituals. At these altars, we will hold assemblies for sacrifice twice a month, 12 assemblies for the tribes and 12 for the city, according to their divisions. The first assembly will be in honor of the gods and divine things, and the second will be for fostering friendship and getting to know one another better. It is important for people to be acquainted with those they marry and those they enter marriage with. In such matters, a person should strive to avoid mistakes, and with this serious purpose in mind, we should establish games, similar to those in the Republic, where young men and women can dance together, seeing and being seen by one another naked, at an appropriate age and on a suitable occasion, while still adhering to the rules of modesty. The directors of these games will be responsible for overseeing and regulating them, and they, along with the guardians of the law, will legislate on any matters we may have overlooked. When there are numerous and detailed aspects to consider, the legislator must inevitably omit something. The annual officers, who have experience and know what is needed, will decide and improvements each year until these enactments and provisions are sufficiently determined. A 10-year experience of sacrifices and dances, covering all aspects, will be sufficient. If the legislator is alive, they shall communicate with him. If the legislator is deceased, the various officers shall refer any omissions they notice to the guardians of the law and correct them until everything is perfect. From that point on, there shall be no more changes, and they shall establish and use the new laws alongside the original laws given by the legislator, which they should avoid changing if possible. If some necessity arises, the magistrates and the entire population must be consulted, and they must seek guidance from all the oracles of the gods. If they all agree, then a change may be made. If they do not agree, under no circumstances should a change be made, as the law ordains. Whenever someone over the age of 25, having seen and been seen by others, believes they have found a suitable marriage partner for the purpose of procreating children, they may marry if they are still under the age of 35. However, they should first learn how to seek what is suitable and appropriate, as Cleinias suggests. For, as Cleinias says, every law should have a suitable prelude.
You remember at the right moment, stranger, and you do not miss the opportunity that the argument provides to say a timely word.
I thank you. We will say to someone born to good parents, "O my son, you should enter into a marriage that wise men would approve of." They would advise you not to avoid a poor marriage, nor to specifically desire a wealthy one. But if all other things are equal, always honor those who are inferior to you and form connections with them. This will benefit the city and the families that are united. For equality and balance contribute much more to virtue than pure homogeneity. If someone is aware of being too headstrong and carried away in all their actions, they should desire to become related to orderly parents. And if someone has the opposite temperament, they should seek an alliance with someone of the opposite nature. Let there be one word about all marriages. Every person should pursue not the marriage that pleases them the most, but the one that is most beneficial to the state. For naturally, everyone is inclined towards what is most like themselves, and this is how the entire city becomes unequal in wealth and disposition. This leads to the undesirable outcomes that we least desire to happen in most states. Now, to explicitly add to the law that the rich should not marry into rich families, nor the powerful into powerful families, but that those with slower natures should be compelled to marry those with quicker natures, and vice versa, may provoke anger and laughter in the minds of many. It is difficult to perceive that the city should be well mixed like a cup, in which the intoxicating wine is hot and fiery, but when tempered by a more sober god, it finds a suitable companion and becomes an excellent and moderate drink, like the statesman. However, in marriage, no one can see that the same result occurs. Therefore, the law should not meddle in such matters. Instead, we should try to persuade people to believe that the compatibility of their children's disposition is more important than equality in excessive wealth when they marry. And we should try to dissuade those who are too eager to make a wealthy marriage through reproach, but not through any compulsion of written law. Let this be our exhortation regarding marriage, and let us remember what was said before, that a person should strive for immortality and leave behind grandchildren who will serve God in their place forever. All of this and much more can be honestly said as a prelude to the duty of marriage. But if a person does not listen and remains unsociable and alienated from their fellow citizens, and is still unmarried at the age of 35, they shall pay an annual fine. The highest class shall pay a fine of 100 drachmae, the second class 70 drachmae, the third class 60 drachmae, and the fourth class 30 drachmae. The money shall be dedicated to the goddess Hera. Anyone who fails to pay the fine annually shall owe 10 times the amount, which shall be collected by the treasurer of the goddess. If they fail to do so, they shall be held accountable and must explain the money during their audit. Anyone who refuses to marry shall be punished with a fine and stripped of all the respect that younger people show to their elders. No young man should willingly obey him, and if he tries to punish someone, everyone should come to the rescue and defend the person being harmed. Anyone who is present but fails to come to the rescue shall be considered a coward and a bad citizen according to the law. I have already discussed the dowry, and I will say again for the benefit of poor men that those who do not give or receive a dowry due to poverty will be compensated. The citizens of our state are provided with the necessities of life, and wives will be less likely to be insolent, and husbands will be less likely to be mean and subservient to them because of property. Those who obey this law will be doing a noble deed, but those who do not obey and give or receive more than 50 drachmae for the wedding garments if they are from the lowest class, or more than a mina, or a mina and a half, if they are from the third or second classes, or 2 minae if they are from the highest class, shall owe a similar amount to the public treasury. The money given or received shall be dedicated to Hera and Zeus, and the treasurers of these gods shall collect the money, as was previously mentioned about the unmarried individuals. The treasurers of Hera were to collect the money or pay the fine themselves. Betrothal by a father shall be valid in the first degree, betrothal by a grandfather in the second degree, and betrothal by brothers who have the same father in the third degree. If none of these relatives are alive, betrothal by a mother shall be valid in the same manner. In cases of exceptional tragedy, the next of kin and the guardians shall have authority. The rituals before marriages or any other sacred acts related to past, present, or future marriages shall be referred to the interpreters, and those who follow their advice shall be satisfied. As for the wedding celebration, no more than 5 male and 5 female friends from both families shall gather, along with a similar number of family members of either sex. No man shall spend more than he can afford. The richest class may spend a mina, the second class half a mina, and so on in proportion to their wealth. All men shall praise those who obey the law, but those who disobey shall be punished by the guardians of the law as individuals lacking in good taste and ignorant of the laws of wedding songs. Drunkenness is always inappropriate, except at the festivals of the god who gave wine. It is particularly dangerous when a person is involved in the business of marriage. At such a crucial moment in their lives, a bride and groom should be fully aware and cautious, ensuring that their offspring will be born to reasonable beings. After all, no one can predict when heaven will grant them children. Moreover, they should not conceive of children when their bodies are weakened by intoxication. Their offspring should be strong, composed, and properly formed, whereas a drunkard is erratic in their actions and loses control of both body and soul. Therefore, a drunkard is incapable of sowing the seed of future generations effectively and is likely to produce offspring who are unstable and untrustworthy, lacking physical and mental stability. Hence, throughout the year and their entire lives, especially when conceiving children, individuals should take care not to intentionally engage in activities that harm their health or involve insolence and wrongdoing. They cannot help but leave an impression of themselves on the souls and bodies of their offspring, and they will beget children who are inferior in every way. This is especially true on the day and night of the wedding, when a person should abstain from such things. The beginning, which is also a god residing within humans, preserves all things if it is treated with proper respect by everyone. Furthermore, those who marry should consider that one of the 2 houses in the lot will become the nest and nursery for their young. There, they should marry, establish a home for themselves, and raise their children, separating from their father and mother. In friendships, there must be a certain degree of desire to unite and bind together different characters. However, excessive interaction without the desire that comes with time gradually erodes friendships due to a sense of satiety. Therefore, a man and his wife should leave their respective parents' homes and establish their own dwelling, treating it as a colony. They should visit and be visited by their parents, beget and raise children, passing on the torch of life from one generation to another, and worship the gods according to the law for eternity. Next, we need to consider what kind of property will be most convenient. Most types of property are easy to understand and acquire, but there is great difficulty when it comes to slaves. The reason is that we speak about them in both right and wrong ways, which is inconsistent with our actions towards them.
I do not understand what you mean, stranger.
I am not surprised, Megillus, because the status of the helots among the Lacedaemonians is the most controversial and debated form of slavery among the Greeks. Some approve of it, while others condemn it. There is less dispute about the slavery that exists among the Heracletes, who subjugated the Mariandynians, and the Thessalian Penesti. Looking at these examples and similar cases, what should we do about owning slaves? I made a comment that naturally prompted a question from you about my meaning. It was this: we all agree that we should have the best and most loyal slaves we can find. Many people have found their slaves to be better in every way than their own siblings or children, and many times they have saved their masters' lives and property, as these stories are well known.
Certainly.
But can't we also say that the souls of slaves are completely corrupt, and that no sensible person should trust them? Even the wisest of our poets, when speaking of Zeus, says, "Far-seeing Zeus takes away half the understanding of men whom the day of slavery subdues." Different people have these two different notions of slaves in their minds. Some of them completely distrust their servants and treat them like wild animals, punishing them with goads and whips, making their souls even more enslaved than before. Others do the opposite.
That's true.
So what should we do in our own country, stranger, given the differences in how owners treat their slaves?
Well, Cleinias, there is no doubt that humans are troublesome creatures, and therefore not very manageable, especially when you try to establish the necessary division between slave, freeman, and master.
That's obvious.
Humans are troublesome beings, as shown by the frequent revolts of the Messenians and the great harm that occurs in states with many slaves who speak the same language, as well as the numerous robberies and lawlessness of the Italian bandits, as they are called. A person who considers all this is truly at a loss. There are only two remedies left to us: not having slaves from the same country, if possible, and not having them speak the same language. This way, they will be more easily controlled. Secondly, we should take care of them, not only for their sake, but also for our own. The right way to treat slaves is to behave properly towards them and to do them even more justice than we do to our equals. Those who naturally and genuinely respect justice and detest injustice will be revealed in their dealings with any class of people to whom they can easily be unjust. Those who are untainted by impiety and injustice in their treatment of their slaves' nature and actions will best sow the seeds of virtue in them. This can be said of every expert, tyrant, and anyone else in authority over their inferiors. Slaves should be punished as they deserve, not admonished as if they were freemen, which will only make them conceited. The language used with a servant should always be that of a command, and we should not joke with them, whether they are male or female. This is a foolish way that many people have of elevating their slaves and making the life of servitude more unpleasant for both them and their masters.
That's true.
Now that each citizen has enough suitable slaves to assist them in their tasks, we can move on to describing their dwellings.
Very well.
Since the city is new and uninhabited, we should take care of all the buildings and their construction, as well as the temples and walls. These matters should have been addressed before discussing marriages, but since we are only talking, there is no objection to changing the order. However, if our plan of legislation is ever to be implemented, then the construction of houses should come before marriage, if God wills it, and afterwards we can establish regulations about marriage. But for now, we are only providing a general outline of these matters.
That's true.
The temple should be placed all around the agora, and the entire city should be built on the heights in a circular shape for defense and purity. Near the temples, there should be buildings for the magistrates and the courts of law. In these places, plaintiffs and defendants will receive their due, and the locations will be considered most sacred, partly because they deal with holy matters and partly because they are the dwelling places of holy gods. These buildings will also house the courts where cases of homicide and other capital offenses can be appropriately tried. As for the walls, McGillis, I agree with Sparta that they should be left buried in the ground and not dug up. There is a poetic saying that walls ought to be of steel and iron, and not of earth. Besides, it's ridiculous for us to send our young men out into the country every year to dig and fortify, under the belief that they are not allowed to set foot in our territory, and then surround ourselves with a wall that is not conducive to the health of cities and tends to make the inhabitants effeminate. It invites people to come in instead of repelling enemies and leads them to believe that their safety comes from the walls and gates, allowing them to sleep in safety. As if they were not meant to work and did not know that true rest comes from labor, and that indulging in laziness and a careless mindset only brings about more trouble. But if people must have walls, the individual houses should be arranged in such a way that the entire city becomes a wall. All the houses should be capable of defense due to their uniformity and alignment with the streets. This concept is like Aristotle's idea in his book Politics. The city, in the form of a single dwelling, will have an appealing appearance and will be easily guarded, thus providing better security. Until the original construction is completed, these should be the main concerns of the inhabitants. The city wardens should oversee the work and impose fines on those who are negligent. They should also ensure cleanliness in all matters related to the city and prevent private individuals from encroaching on public property through construction or excavations. Additionally, they should ensure that rainwater drains easily and attend to any other matters that need to be managed within or outside the city. The guardians of the law will pass any further necessary regulations based on their experience and address any gaps in the existing laws. Now that these matters, as well as the buildings in the agora, the gymnasia, places of instruction, and theaters, are all ready for scholars and spectators, let us move on to the topics that come after marriage in the order of legislation.
Certainly.
Assuming that marriages already exist, Cleinias, the next topic to discuss is the way in which the bride and groom should live during the year after marriage before children are born. It is not easy for us to determine how the bride and groom should live in a city that aims to be superior to others. We have already encountered many difficulties, but this will be the greatest and most disagreeable to many. Nevertheless, I cannot help but express what I believe to be right and true, Cleinias.
Of course.
Anyone who believes that they can establish laws for the public conduct of states while neglecting the private lives of citizens is mistaken. They think that individuals can spend their days as they please without the need for order in all things. By relinquishing control over their private lives and assuming that they will conform to the law in their public and communal life, they are making a grave error. Why am I making this point? Because I am going to propose that the bride and groom continue to live at the communal tables just as they did before marriage. This was an unusual practice when it was first introduced by the legislator in your region, McGillis and Cleinias. I assume it was implemented during a time of war or similar danger, which necessitated the passing of such a law. This would occur in sparsely populated areas and times of hardship. However, once people had experienced and become accustomed to communal dining, it was found that this practice contributed to security. And thus, the custom of communal tables arose among you.
That seems plausible.
I mentioned that there may have been singularity and danger in imposing this custom initially, but now it is not as difficult. However, there is another institution that should naturally follow this practice, and it would be excellent if it existed anywhere, but currently it does not. Describing or implementing this institution is not easy, and it would be like the legislator attempting to comb wool into a fire or perform any other impossible and useless feat.
Stranger, what is the reason for this extreme hesitation?
I will explain without wasting any more time. The cause of every good in a state is law and order, while disorder or poor organization often leads to the ruin of what is well ordered. This is the point at which the argument currently stands. The communal tables for men in your region, Cleinias and McGillis, are a heavenly and admirable institution, as I mentioned earlier. However, you are mistaken in leaving women unregulated by law. Women do not have a similar institution of public tables in broad daylight. And the part of humans that is naturally inclined toward secrecy and stealth due to their vulnerability, namely the female sex, has been left without regulation by the legislator, which is a significant mistake. As a result of this neglect, many things have become lax among you, which could have been much better if they had been regulated by law. Neglecting regulations concerning women may not only be seen as neglecting half of the entire matter, according to Aristotle's Politics, but the consequences of this neglect are even more significant since women's nature is inferior to that of men in terms of capacity for virtue. Carefully considering this matter and organizing all our institutions relating to both men and women according to a common principle contributes to the happiness of the state. However, at present, mankind is in such an unfortunate condition that no sensible person would dare to speak of communal tables in places and cities where they have never been established. How can anyone avoid being utterly ridiculous when attempting to compel women to publicly display how much they eat and drink? This is something that the female sex is likely to take offense at. Women are accustomed to hiding in dark places, and when dragged into the light, they will resist with all their might and be too much for the legislator to handle. Therefore, as I mentioned before, in most places, they will not tolerate the truth being spoken without raising a tremendous outcry. However, they may tolerate it in this state. And if we assume that our entire discussion about the state has not been mere idle talk, I would like to prove to you, if you are willing to listen, that this institution is good and proper. However, if you would rather not, I will refrain.
There is nothing that we would both prefer more, stranger, than to hear what you have to say.
Very well, and do not be surprised if I go back a little, for we have plenty of time, and there is nothing preventing us from considering the subject of law from every point of view.
True.
Then let us return to what we were saying at first. Every person should understand that humans either had no beginning at all and will never have an end, but will always exist and has always existed, or that it began an exceptionally long time ago.
Certainly.
Well, haven't there been formations and destructions of states, and all sorts of orderly and disorderly pursuits, and diverse desires for food and drink throughout the world, and all sorts of changes in the seasons in which animals have undergone countless transformations?
No doubt.
And can't we suppose that vines and olives appeared, which previously did not exist, and the gifts of Demeter and her daughter, for which Triptolemus was the minister, and that before these existed, animals started devouring each other as they still do?
True.
Furthermore, the practice of humans sacrificing one another still exists among many nations, while on the other hand, we hear of other human beings who did not even dare to taste the flesh of a cow and had no animal sacrifices, but only cakes and fruits dipped in honey, and similar pure offerings, but no animal flesh. They abstained from eating animals under the belief that they should not eat them and should not stain the altars of the gods with blood. In those days, people are said to have lived a kind of Orphic life, using lifeless things but abstaining from living things.
That has been the constant tradition and is true.
Someone might ask us, what is the point of all this?
A truly relevant question, stranger.
Therefore, Cleinias, I will try to draw the natural conclusion if I can.
Proceed.
I see that among humans, everything depends on three wants and desires, which lead to virtue if properly guided, or the opposite if misguided. These wants and desires are eating and drinking, which begin at birth. Every animal has a natural desire for them and is strongly driven and rebels against anyone who says they cannot satisfy all their pleasures and appetites and get rid of all the corresponding pains. The third and greatest and most intense want and desire emerges last, and it is the fire of sexual lust, which ignites all kinds of indulgence and madness in humans. We must strive to control these three disorders with the three great principles of fear, law, and right reason, redirecting them from what is considered most pleasant to what is best, using the muses and the gods who preside over contests to suppress their increase and influence. But let us return after marriage, let us discuss the birth of children, and after their birth, their upbringing and education. Through discussion, the various laws will be perfected, and we will eventually reach the topic of communal meals. Whether such associations are limited to men or extended to women as well, we will have a better understanding when we approach and examine them more closely. Then we can determine the necessary previous institutions that must precede them. As I mentioned before, we will examine them in more detail and be better able to establish the appropriate laws for them.
Very true.
Let us keep in mind the words that have been spoken, as they may be needed in the future.
What do you want us to remember?
What we understood under the three words eating, drinking, and the excitement of love.
We will surely remember, stranger.
Very good. Now let us proceed to marriage and teach people how they should conceive of children, threatening them with the terrors of the law if they disobey.
What do you mean?
The bride and groom should consider that they are to produce the best and most beautiful children for the state. Whenever people are involved in any action, they always succeed when they pay attention and focus on what they are doing. But when they do not pay attention or have no focus, they fail. Therefore, let the groom focus on the bride and the act of conceiving children, and let the bride do the same with the groom, especially when the children are not yet born. Let the women we have chosen to oversee these matters, and let them, in whatever number, large or small, and at whatever time the magistrates command, gather every day in the temple of Aletheia for a third of the day. When they are assembled, let them inform each other of anyone they see, whether person, who is conceiving children, disregarding the regulations given during the nuptial sacrifices and ceremonies. Let the act of conceiving children and the supervision of those who are conceiving them continue for 10 years, during the time when marriage is fertile. But if anyone remains childless until now, they should seek advice from their relatives and the women who hold positions of authority, and they should divorce for the benefit of both parties. However, if there is any disagreement about what is appropriate and beneficial for either party, they should choose 10 of the guardians of the law and abide by their permission and decision. The women who oversee these matters should visit the homes of the young couples and, through a combination of advice and warnings, persuade them to abandon their foolishness and mistakes. If they persist, the women should inform the guardians of the law, and the guardians should intervene. If they are unable to stop the behavior, they should bring the matter before the public, and the individuals involved should have their names recorded and swear that they are unable to reform the person in question. If the accused individual cannot prove in a court of law that those who have recorded their name are wrong, they should be deprived of certain privileges as a citizen. They should not attend weddings or celebrations after the birth of children, and if they do, anyone can strike them without consequence. The same rules apply to women. They should not be allowed to appear in public, receive honors, or attend weddings and birthday celebrations if they have been recorded as behaving disorderly and cannot obtain a verdict. And if, after they have fulfilled their duty of procreation according to the law, a person engages in sexual relations with someone who is still having children, they should face the same penalties as those who are still building a family. Once the time for procreation has passed, those who abstain from such matters should be respected, while those who do not should be held in disesteem. Now, if most people behave modestly, the laws can remain inactive. But if they are disorderly, the laws should be enforced. The first year of a person's life is considered the beginning, and the date of birth should be recorded in the temples of their ancestors as the start of their existence, whether they are a boy or a girl. Each phratria should have the names of the successive archons, who mark the years, inscribed on a white wall. The names of the living members of the phratria should also be recorded nearby, and when they pass away, their names should be erased. The age limit for marriage for women should be from 16 to 20 years at the most, while for men it should be from 30 to 35 years. A woman should hold the position of authority at 40 years old, and a man at 30 years old. Men should be eligible for military service from the ages of 20 to 60, and if there is a need for women to serve in the military, they should do so after giving birth to children until they reach 50 years of age. Consideration should be given to what is possible and suitable for everyone.